My father grew up with several brothers and sisters, two sisters, in Kiev. He lived in a basement, and they made caps, men's caps at the time, and that's how they lived. He told me the story of his youth, or at least a little bit of his story of his youth. And one of the things that seemed very funny to me is that he was known by his friends as the best church jumper in Kiev. It seems he used to climb up
Fences?
Get up to the top of churches and jump down the roof and down the pediments and he was the fastest and best church jumper.
Did they have
in fact,
competition?
all his life he seemed to be so proud of that. The time that he reached the peak of church jumping, he was about the time of his bar mitzvah. And after that, he concentrated on jumping girls.
What, do you know approximately what year he was born? Like 1890 something?
Probably a little after that. He would probably be about, no, he must know. He would say, I was born probably when he was close to 40.
Well, what was his full name?
Shmuel Horovotsky.
Harvit?
Horovotsky.
Do you know how to spell it?
Well, it's in Cyrillic, so I don't know.
How about the transliteration? How about the transliteration?
Sam Gorowitz.
Gorowitz.
At any rate, he remembers. I remember him telling me the story of terribly cold winters, much colder than it is here in this house now. Since even though I learned of his penurious habits, it was freezing. And his family his father and mother were both in the hospital. And he was left there with his younger brothers. He was the oldest. He was left there with his younger brothers and his two sisters. And one of them got very ill. And he felt that he had to take her to the hospital. And he told the story, and somehow, not somehow, it seemed to move him, and he told me the story quite often, how he carried his little sister in his arms in the middle of winter, and the soles were ripped on his shoes, and by the time he got to the hospital, she was dead. That's the story. At any rate, the question is, one of the things to be before we got into this part of it, was how we got to the United States. The story of how we got to the United States. Well, I guess there was enough in there in Europe, which wasn't that, in Russia, which wasn't that pleasant for a Jew to be involved in and living with. But the main thing had to do with the draft. That he reached a certain age where he was about to be drafted, and that's why a lot of Jews did leave Russia. And the story starts with, that he told me, starts with him crossing the border of either Ukraine, which all was considered Russia. Because he refers to it as Russia. He never referred to it as the Ukraine. Except that he was surrounded by Kazakhs. And as he crossed the border with a girl, he always took a girl along with him. Wherever he went, except I guess was church jumping. But the border guard shot at him and killed the girl. And he proceeded to run and left her there to, he assumed, die. And he walked for months at a month.
What country did he enter?
I have no idea, but the next part of the story that he told me starts with him crossing the Italian border.
Can I just ask something? How old was he when he was about how old at that
About
time?
18.
And so his parents were out of the hospital now?
I have no idea. I'm
Okay.
just telling you
What
what he
you
told me
just-
when I was a child.
Okay,
And of course, that makes it all subject to questions as to validity on his
Right.
part and memory and validity
Right.
on my part.
right,
So, at any rate, he crossed into Italy and proceeded slowly through Italy. I don't know where he slept, except that he said he took food. Food was along the road. Farmers used to leave certain swaths of places where people could take, food. Must have been a custom. At any rate, he got to a place where he met another girl and stayed with her for about a year or so. And for some reason or other, he left and ended up in Africa. He was directed somehow to a charity that sent people to the United States free on cattle boats, a Jewish charity organization. And so he came across to the United States. But went, as he said, I don't know if he, but which seems weird to me, he always walked. He never mentions any other transportation than walking.
mm-hmm.
But so of course that's probably not so. He must have got some transportation. But at any rate, he describes the horror of the trip in the steerage of the boat.
How long was it? A couple months?
What?
How long was a boat trip over?
Couldn't be that.
A couple weeks at most.
Okay.
What made the conditions in steerage bad? Do you remember what?
Smells,
So it was cows, right?
urination. My memory, he referred to it as a cattle boat. But I doubt if it was a cattle boat. When he got to the United States, he went through the, what do you call it?
Ellis Island?
Ellis Island. And when he was passing through, he had to sign his name and he couldn't write. So they wrote it down for him. What is your name? So he said Shmuel, and they wrote Samuel because everybody was
Right.
1 out of 10 people were Shmuels. The other was Shmuels. And at any rate, they said, what's your last name? And he said, Gorowitz. So they said, oh, Horowitz. No,
Yeah.
because probably every Horowitz, in fact,
Yeah.
he had told me, or another relative told me, that we were distantly connected to Vladimir Horowitz. But he insisted it wasn't Horowitz, it was Gorowitz. So they wrote down Gorowitz.